to the Knowing Show. It took me a couple minutes this morning to just get aligned and ready for this. I have been working on something over the last couple of weeks, along with my team, that is very special to me, very important to me. And I wanted to announce it today, and I can announce it, but it's not ready. And there was something I feel so sad about that. I feel so sad, and it was no one's fault. It was just some of it was a learning curve too, because we decided to make some changes at the last minute. But it was funny because I was actually on with my EA at the time, and she is just a dream. But it's so funny because in the moments of realizing literally 10, 15 minutes ago that I wasn't going to be able to share it today or have it ready, right? It was so funny because I just wanted to blame someone. And what I want to talk about today is awareness in relationships and beyond romantic relationships, because it's awareness in every single regard. Pertaining to relationships. It's not just, when we talk about relationships, I think so many of us think about our partners, but relationships with our employees is so important in how we show up with them. And so I felt this moment of like just being upset and feeling upset because I've really been working hard on this. And I've tried. So for those of you who have been following in my journey over the last couple of months, I really was moving through processing why I just had this abhorrence to sales. And sales was something really that felt like trying. And for the majority of my life, I haven't tried, like fully really tried it, most things. Just either they've come naturally or easily, which what a blessing. And there's been so much fear over not wanting to try in the first place. There's so much vulnerability wrapped up in trying because then you fail. And if you don't really care, you don't fall very far. But if you really care, you feel the emotional impact of it not working out. And so kind of in alignment with what I shared this morning in my post about, if I let other people involved in my birthday, that's what my post was about this morning. I feel more vulnerable because I love my birthday so much, and I'd rather just like hole up and love my birthday all alone and not share it with anybody because that's more vulnerable and I could be disappointed. Same thing with what I'm working on in my business and what I've been preparing specifically in this regard. It's like I've had this vulnerability around it because I really care and because I'm really excited about what I'm about to share. And I'll share this here in just a minute, but there's a vulnerability there. And so because there's vulnerability in what I'm working on, I have more heightened emotions around it. It's not just some logical IQ driven output for a client. And I actually really do care about what we do for our clients, but this is very EQ driven and very much so in alignment with my brand and who I am. So there's a lot of emotion there. I am so grateful I moved through the practice of vertical alignment this morning and was ready effectively to experience this because I'm on with my EA 15, 20 minutes ago, realizing that I'm feeling upset in the moment. And my initial reaction is to blame. I want to blame her. And then I'm like, I want to blame myself because then I can take all the control back. And it's no one's fault. It's mine. I should have known better. And that alone is even a controlling dynamic too, to assume all the blame. Rather, and this is what is just so interesting even now as I'm kind of processing this with you, is to just let go. And I'm reading David Hawkins right now, Letting Go. And I'm only on chapter 2.5. So I've got a long way to go. But the concept of being able to sense when this comes up. I was on a podcast with Ben Albert yesterday, and we were talking about this very thing. It's going to come out in a couple weeks. But I was talking about just knowing your body well enough to sense when you're starting to move out of alignment. So I was having this conversation with my EA, starting to feel upset, and I could sense myself moving out of alignment. And in that moment, I just took a moment to pause and I said, I want you to know I'm not upset with you. I am upset and this is frustrating, but I just want you to know that I'm not upset with you. Are you okay? And she was like, yeah, I'm good. And so I was like, okay, now I can go back to, okay, let me move through this and process this. And it's so interesting because then as we move through the emotion, we realize that it's really not that big of a deal. But if we stop the emotion, if we don't actually allow ourselves to move through the process of, who was it? The woman who wrote Come As You Are. I've never read that. But she was on a podcast that I was listening to, and she gave this example. I think her name's Emily. And she gave this example of emotions being a tunnel. And you have to move through the emotion to get on the other side. Otherwise, you're stuck. You're stuck in an emotion. And actually, Bessel van der Kolk, who's the author of The Body Keeps the Score, talks about this very thing. And he is using an extreme example of war veterans. He's the one that coined PTSD. But y'all, each one of us, we get stuck even in all of these little moments, little upsets. And I think of them as like little T traumas. We think about the big T traumas, obviously the war veterans, losing your spouse, losing someone that you love. We think of these big T traumas as the only times that allow for us to go through these cataclysmic moments that are really genuinely painful, rather than like, man, I'm actually really upset that this thing that I've been working on for 2 weeks is delayed and not ready. Darn, let me move through the emotional feeling of it so that I get to the other side and that emotion I'm not still stuck in that emotion. So that in my client call this afternoon, or talking with my sister, or talking to somebody else, we haven't moved through the emotional feeling. And then they might say something, it triggers the emotion that we've been stuck in to reactivate. And we act out because we never moved through it in the first place. So that emotion that we're stuck in, it's not about suppression or regret. It's so funny. Even now, as I'm thinking about David Hawkins letting go, I started listening to it last night as I was going to bed. I was on with Sunit Agarwal yesterday, and he was talking about how he will listen to motivational podcasts or affirmations or something as he goes to bed. And so I started listening to Letting Go, and it was so good. I was distracted, so I had to turn it off. I wasn't able to go to sleep to it because I want to train my subconscious. And actually, a dear friend of mine recommended I do this months ago. So I'm finally getting around to actually doing it. And I need to train my body to be able to go to sleep while someone's talking to me. Doesn't feel very respectful. So I've got to figure that one out. But all that to say, as I was listening to it last night, he was talking about how Sigmund Freud, the purpose of kind of letting go of emotions, it wasn't so that we vomit our emotion on somebody else and we let go of it that way, but it's actually more so about neutralizing the emotion. And he digs deeper into what that actually means to neutralize. But what I've found is that by moving through the emotion in that split second, I neutralize it and it doesn't hold the weight over me. And I don't carry it on with me after that. And so the moving through the emotion is so critically important. It may not be for moving through it right now, right? Like I needed to get off the phone with my EA, send a couple emails, and I took a few minutes before jumping on here just to ensure that I was in a good place having moved through the emotion. And in so doing, we gain fresh perspective. By moving through the emotion, we gain perspective on what really matters. And what really matters is my relationship with my EA, who she is. She's such a gem. She's so precious. And I'm so grateful that I did not act out at her. I have another girl on my team. She's absolutely wonderful. She's overseeing everything for the Knowing podcast. She's amazing. She's also an actress. And so her schedule changes. And if I'm upset about something, I might actually look at her schedule changing as something that I might blame for why I'm upset, rather than, man, I was already feeling upset about something else. She and I have this agreement. She's incredible. She literally is doubling for an A-list celebrity that we all know. So she's incredible. She's her own little entrepreneur herself. And y'all, it's just so important, these relationships that we have in our business. And this is why emotional intelligence, bringing it into the business, is of utmost importance. One of the jobs that I had before starting my own business, and actually this relationship was one of the reasons why I started my own business, I never knew who was going to be walking in the front door in regards to my boss. I had no idea. Would she be? It was like the proposal where she walks into the office and everyone types like, she's coming, like the witch is here. And that's kind of how it felt. Either she was the witch is here, or she was so wonderful. She flattered you, made you feel like $1,000,000, loved your work. And the next day it could be totally turned on its head, hated everything. And the inconsistency there really causes this semblance of feeling unsafe almost at all times. Now, that's way worse when it's inside your own home. So that is why it is critically important that we understand emotional health so that we're able to be a safe place for our children, for our partner, and they're not walking on eggshells every time they hear us coming down the hall. I heard someone say one time, I think it was during a knowing retreat, they were like, I could tell what kind of evening we would have by the footsteps of my dad walking in. And I was like, dang, that's a very gut feeling that you might have if you hear certain types of footsteps. And that's also deeply unsafe. So for us looking in the mirror and just using myself as an example this morning, I'm so grateful that I got aligned before starting my day. Hopefully I would have had a similar awareness. But y'all, this is why it's so critical that we take radical responsibility to get ourselves in alignment. That is our responsibility to ensure that we can show up and act in accordance with who we want to be at every single moment of the day. And if we need to pull aside because we've got an emotional upset, that's very normal. But hey, I just need a couple minutes. I'm actually really sad about this. And that for the other person, right? So I'm going to put myself in the shoes of my EA. Hearing this could be upsetting. Oh, like my boss is upset. But what emotional intelligence looks like in that moment is for her to do the exact same thing that I'm doing, moving through the emotion, taking responsibility for truly what was hers and me taking responsibility for what was mine, and then not taking responsibility for what was never ours to begin with. So we're learning how to do this process and this setting up of different types of technology that we haven't done before. I'm not a technologist. She isn't a technologist. And frankly, I don't have someone who's a techie on my team right now. So we're kind of figuring this out. Thank God for ChatGPT. ChatGPT is our technologist. And we're learning as we go. And so there's something about taking responsibility only for what is ours. And that's something that, frankly, I really need to grow in. Because even this morning, me sharing about that vulnerability around my birthday and not wanting anyone to really celebrate it. I mean, they can celebrate it with me, but the more that I trust them and hope for them to make my birthday celebration something that I want and need, there is a semblance of danger there, because our job is to really meet our own needs and then offer and extend the opportunity for people to take up a position of doing the same. And hey, would you meet my need in this way? I need to talk to somebody. Would you come and talk to me? And they can say no. And there's a vulnerability in not knowing what they're going to say. But radical responsibility for me is, hey, would you talk to me? And I'm also talking to my therapist tomorrow. I've got people in queue that I'm paying and that I'm ensuring that I'm getting the support and care that I need. So radical responsibility looks like moving through the emotion. It looks like taking responsibility for what is ours and being able to differentiate what is not. And then also, it's not even, I would say, so when I think about radical responsibility, it really is the practice of going inward. In my book, I talk about activating agency. And that's kind of like the outward expression. So radical responsibility goes inward. Activating agency is the outward expression of that. And that's where empathy comes in. Because the empathy for me is, let me go sit in my EA's position. Hey, are you okay? Is this upsetting for you? But first, I really actually need to sit in my experience. And I've seen this to actually be true. I did this a lot throughout my marriage, which was not good. I would only ever sit in their experience. I would never sit in mine. And so I fundamentally was like detached and disassociated from myself, my emotions, and my own experience and my body. Like I just was disassociated in a really dangerous way. And so I was effectively living vicariously through my partner. I would sit in their experience, look at what happened and say, oh, wow, yeah, I can see how you would think that. And I never did that for myself. And that's where codependency it's like a breeding ground for codependency when we're not sitting in our own experience. So that's why radical responsibility is so critical to go inward first. and then we can activate agency. And y'all, I've experienced this again a number of times when I have not sat in my experience first, because our experience gives us visibility into the truth rather than now. Here's what's so, wow, I just thought of this. This is so interesting. So looking at the truth, I don't even know if I want to go here. I left a voice message for somebody the other day and I said, the truth changes depending on the context, which is, and as I even say this now, I'm like, it makes me nervous to go down this rabbit hole, but let's just see what happens. So thinking about truth, the truth of an experience and a situation, right? And I'm not talking about morals or something of the like. I'm talking about trying to give a benign example. All right. This happened to me one time. So the experience is that I'm at a restaurant with someone else, someone I was with at the time. And I'm talking, I'm laughing, we're having a good time. Suddenly, they visibly shut down and kick me under the table as their sign of like, you're being too loud. So the truth is that someone kicked me trying to tell me to be quiet, but that's what I experienced, right? And then if I only look at it through their eyes, the context completely changes. So if I went off and told somebody, this is what happened, this is the truth as I know it, but then come to find out when I actually heard from them about their experience, and then they say, no, I actually kicked you because I wanted to get your attention. There was a senator over there. I wanted to show you who it was. It's like, oh, well, that totally changes what my experience was, right? So this is where it's really, really interesting. The truth is that I was laughing, I was joking, their face changes, they kicked me under the table. For me, I'm like, oh, what did I do wrong? And the little inner kid of me comes out and I feel shame, but they're actually just trying to get my attention that there is a senator over there. So the truth changes with the context that is added to it. All of a sudden, the broad scope of the horizon that is context illuminates. And so that's where it's so interesting with truth in and of itself, because us only looking at it from their perspective or us only looking at it from our perspective, we're limited in what we can see if we're not sitting in my experience and theirs, and then also taking in the objective situation as well, just kind of like the objective realities. I was talking to someone the other day and it was like, okay, before we sit in my experience or your experience, let's just agree on terms, effectively, terms of what happened. I was sitting there, your face changed, you kicked me under the table. Do we both agree on that? Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris will effectively agree on terms before they begin their debates. And then the next day, when they go to resume the debates, they will reiterate the partner's arguments. And so, y'all, it's so important. It's so important that we take the time. Oh, I don't know what I just did. It's so important that we take the time to sit in our experience, but also sit in the experience of our, I don't know if you guys can see this. I don't know what just happened. I just lost all of my video. Well, we'll just keep going. Hopefully this is fine. Hopefully this is fine. As I'm thinking about it now, radical responsibility is going inward to do the work, to know our emotion, to know our experience, and to effectively move through it in order to thus be able to activate agency about the choice we're going to make. But what's really interesting in sitting with our experience is we have to understand if there's a belief that is being activated that's actually not in congruence with who we want to be. So I've been talking about this oh no, I can see on my Instagram that this video isn't working. I may not be able to do this. Maybe my live is done. I don't know what I did. Well, there we go. Hey, I'm back. That's so funny. Radical responsibility allows for us to engage in relationships with such awareness. And there's something really exciting here about taking up that mantle. I had this picture in my mind's eye a couple months ago of what forgiveness looks like. And it's not just, in relationship, there's so many different levels of what responsibility looks like. And one of those is, I would even say, forgiveness. There's a responsibility to release people lest that hold. We talk about letting go by David Hawkins, letting go of the emotion, but also the letting go of the person in and of itself. It's really hard for me to let go of the emotion while I have their neck collar in my hands. I'm like, hey, I'm not mad at you anymore, but I'm going to keep you here tethered and tied to what you owe me. But if I'm really going to let go of them and the emotion, forgiveness of them moving through the emotion, it actually allows for me to reassume and reclaim my position of power. So kind of the vision that I had was like this little boy with a cape flying behind him, like that stock imagery of it, like a little boy with like this hero outfit on at the pinnacle of a mountain. And what we do in forgiveness is we're effectively reclaiming that position at the pinnacle of the mountain. Because for so long as we're holding the neck collar of that other person, they have a power and hold over us. We think we're holding on to them. Well, they're really, we're doing what we're doing and holding over them is really keeping ourselves in a noose as well. We're not free for so long as we're holding onto an emotion or onto a person. And they've got this power over us, even though we think we're the ones holding on. And so in letting go of the emotion, in letting go of the person, we are effectively reclaiming our position in the driver's seat of our life. We're reclaiming our power. And that's activating agency. So I think just to summarize, and I like this processing with you guys, radical responsibility is the releasing of the emotion, and activating agency in terms of the outward manifestation of that is letting go of the person. And that's forgiveness. So what I wanted to share, what I've been working on, is this whole process of vertical alignment that has changed my life, which is the very thing that knowing retreat attendees has asked for at the end of every single retreat. Every single one has asked, like, how do we make sure that we don't stop the momentum that we've been building over the last couple of days? Because we really go deep. We really expose ourselves and show up naked. And it's hard work, and we look in the mirror, and it's also incredibly healing. And so when they leave, it's like, okay, how do I maintain this moving forward? And so what I would do is every single morning that we're all together, I would give them vertical alignments. And it would be a process of awakening our bodies, our souls, our spirits, and really bringing everything into alignment, rooted and grounded, so that we can start the day in that position of power to then move forward with awareness, rather than, for example, what happened this morning. That's not the thing controlling me, but rather I'm the one in the driver's seat, my true self. So what I've done, my birthday's on Monday, and what I've done is I've created 21 days of vertical alignment. So effectively the same thing I would give my retreat attendees, I wanted to give to you. This is something that is really important to me, and they're free, but they also come with a price. Like my ask is that you practice the practice, that you do the work, that you move through these alignments, and then tell me what you think. Like, tell me if they're meaningful to you. Tell me if they help you, because I've had multiple people reach out to me over the last, honestly, year, and talk about the impact of the retreats, talk about the impact of the social content. And I'm so grateful, because frankly, it's messy for me. And I'm just grateful that there is change. And this is something that I believe, and I know, because I've done it, how impactful it is at taking the time every single morning to align myself, to settle into the silence of the morning, to allow for the silence of new inputs, and allow for my soul to speak, for my spirit to align with even my body. Knowing my body allowed for me to be aware that I had emotions coming up during my conversation with my EA. And because I knew my body well enough, I could be alerted to those sensations and not allow those sensations to cause me to act out of alignment of who I want to be. So the first week of alignments is really actually about connecting with ourself, our physical self. The second week is really about connecting with our soul. And then the third is about the spirit and like how to live in alignment with our ideal. So every day there's 5 different prompts to kind of 5 steps that go in alignment with the acronym ALIGN. So A is awaken, and that's very much so awakening the physical body. The second is L for listen, and listening to the emotions and just kind of getting a sense for what's going on. I is illuminate, illuminating our spirit and illuminating the truth, because I believe this spirit is the pathway to the divine. So it's really bringing in the truth. Those are some more of those moral truths, like you're worthy. That's a moral truth, I believe. And then N is navigate. No, that's the last one. G is growth. So the prompt is actually a very specific journaling prompt, whereas the first 3 are just kind of like settling in and listening what's going on with my body, how am I doing? And then growth is like, okay, here's your journaling prompt. This is going to get you to the next level. And then N is for navigate, which is moving through the rest of your day. So I had wanted to give you the gift in the chat, but I'll go ahead and drop it in over the next couple of hours as it gets finished. The landing page is so pretty. I'm wondering if I can even pull it up now and show it to you guys. We're not done yet, but I'll go ahead and just, I think I can share my screen. I'm really excited. It really is it's so important to me that people have access to something that really has changed my life, and this practice is the very thing that has done that. So with that, thank you all so much for joining. I'll go ahead and drop this in the next day or two. And I'll talk about it again tomorrow a little bit, but it begins on Monday. So if you sign up over the next couple of days, the 21 days officially begin on Monday. So with that, thank you, friends.